Welcome back into another year of Tampa to Casey Phillips here with staff writer and editor Brianna Dix. Man, I'm so excited to do this again for another year. First of all, love doing the show with you. Second of all, the fact we're sitting here means there's a game on Sunday,
yes.
which is great.
Football is back.
Football's back of the real kind, not just the preseason doesn't count kind.
Yes.
We have so much to talk about, especially it being week one. There's been so much that because we have not done the show in the offseason, we have a lot we can go over. And I feel like especially the fact that we just had those roster cut downs, now there's only the one big cut down instead of the different layers of it. And so I thought that'd be a good place for us to start, is just going into week one, assessing what this roster looks like now that there have been these cut downs, and what were some of the storylines or things that stood out to you about those cuts, who we kept, who we didn't, and why.
I would say I wasn't necessarily shocked by any of the moves, but I think the biggest takeaway for me, and one of the most exciting things when you look at this roster, is just how young it is and the undrafted rookies that made this team. And I think you hear every single year coaches stressing, every rep counts, take advantage of the opportunities, because every play, every rep, they're signing their name to that production on the field. And you really saw that with running back Sean Tucker and with outside linebacker Marquise Watts making the roster. And Sean Tucker kind of has that underdog story of, he was projected to go high, and then during the pre-draft physical at the scouting combine, they discovered that heart issue, so he fell, and then he ends up getting signed by the Bucs following the draft. And not only does he make the final 53, but now he's listed as the number 2 running back on the depth chart behind Rachaad White. And I think you just really saw that lateral elusiveness, the contact balance, the vision, really, really impressed during the preseason. And then with Marquise Watts, this is a loaded outside linebacker corps, a guy that went undrafted, went unsigned. Not only did he make the initial 90-man roster, but then he made the 53. And I think for me, the most notable thing in seeing him in the preseason was that strip sack against Pittsburgh. That was so impressive. And even though they recovered it, he, against Broderick Jones, their first-round pick, basically just goes underneath his pads and pushes him back into the quarterback for a sack, knocks the ball out. Really, really impressive play to see from him. So I'm excited to see the young guys kind of take that step forward this year.
Yeah, I agree. Those were some of my big takeaways from the roster decisions, was 6 undrafted rookies being kept. That is an incredible amount. I mean, that's amazing. And yes, also the idea of how much younger this team is. All those draft picks, all those undrafted guys. And we knew that, right? I mean, after the Super Bowl, and even losing Brady, he obviously brought the average age up a wee bit. But even losing him, you kept so many of these guys that it was one of the older teams in the league. And that's always such an interesting balance to me, of where you try to add the veteran wisdom, knowing how to be a pro, having that influence in the locker room, and then also wanting the young guys. And of course, when you look at it from a salary cap idea, younger guys usually cheaper, right? If they're on that first contract, they're the cheaper ones. So as you try to do this, and we saw that the Bucs had gotten into a pretty tough spot salary cap wise, they had to address it somehow. One of the easiest ways to do that is by getting younger, by getting guys on that first contract. And then outside linebacker was the other position that really stood out to me. First of all, they kept 6.
Yes.
That's a lot. It's a lot of outside linebackers.
It is.
Typically, Bowles has kept 4, maybe 5. And of course, you always have to weigh, well, if you keep one more here, where do you not keep over here? And what does that mean? And usually special teams is one of the big areas. But I feel like for this group, it was not just the special teams needs. It was that they proved they needed to be on this roster. That all preseason, he kept saying that is going to be the hardest position to make decisions on. You brought up Marquise Watts. I think that's a great example. We also have Cam Gill, who is such an interesting story to me, of, again, an undrafted guy. So there's another undrafted guy that's made it in that room. And his first career sack comes in the Super Bowl. This guy is so interesting to me. And of course, last year was hurt the whole time. You also had Shaq Barrett that was hurt. I can't wait to see that group in terms of a fully loaded group that Bowles was having a hard time making cuts on, guys coming back from injury. I think that's going to be really interesting to see why they forced his hand into keeping 6.
And they were able to re-sign Anthony Nelson, which I think going into the offseason was something we didn't know if we were going to be able to do with the salary cap restriction.
Yeah, that's the guy that was called kind of Steady Eddie. He just, you know what you're getting, you know who he is, and he just shows up when he needs to. I'm just so glad that group seems like it'll have more depth this year, because if you remember at the end of last year, Joe and Anthony played every single snap for multiple games, which at that position is wild.
Yes.
So I'm sure they're thrilled also of like, hey, little breather.
More guys.
That'd be great. So to put in perspective, we both talked about how much younger the roster is. I was looking at this. We now only have 6 players over the age of 30 on this active roster. And 23 players are under 25. So not even 25, 24 and less. It's 23 of the guys on the team. So there was a big old pendulum swing there, which just makes me feel real old. So it's fine. We're fine. Okay, so I know that going into this game, one of the big things we're all really excited to see is Dave Canales in the new role as the play caller. He got to call it in the preseason a bit, but we all know they don't really open the playbook fully. It's kind of the teeny tiny little glimpse into it. So this is the first time that we will get to see him play call with a full playbook at his disposal. And for him, the first time he will be doing that since doing it for a JV team. I love it. I can't wait to see what this looks like. I know how excited he is for it. So for you, what do we know at this point about what you expect a Dave Canales offense to look like? And just what are you going to be trying to learn when you watch it on Sunday?
Well, since Dave Canales arrived, I think he's really stressed that this new reimagined offense is really going to try and marry the run and the pass. And it's kind of moving along with the evolution of the league, kind of the horizontal stretch, but you're going to have a lot more motion is something that everybody keeps talking about, whether that's the mid zone, the outside zone, the jet motions, the play fakes, the bootlegs. All of these things are going to kind of coincide to open up play action. And I think what's also really exciting is that this is the exact system that Baker Mayfield thrived in, whether it was at Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley or whether it was with Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland. And just kind of how he was able to do the boot action. And this is something that really Kevin Stefanski, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay have kind of coined, where it's that outside zone turns, naked bootleg where it opens up the play action, but then also the boot action. But the emphasis for this offense is going to be getting that run game going to dictate the flow of games and to be able to sell that, because then once teams have to respect your run game, then that creates opportunities for Mike Evans. That creates opportunities for Chris Godwin, Cade Otton, all of these pieces when they move more bodies to load up the box, to attack the run. So I know that I'm extremely excited to see the way that this season goes. And also I think this works in with the skill set of Rachaad White, who played in a similar system. Really, duo was the only thing he didn't do at Arizona State. He did the power, he did the mid, he did the outside zone, but then also the offensive line, the athleticism of this unit. And I think it's really going to play into their strengths with kind of the wide zone, the blocking in space, the pulls, the traps, and all of those things.
Yeah, I think that's going to be setting everybody up for success. It just feels like that's what I keep hearing everybody talk about, is how they feel empowered in this Dave Canales offense. That the offensive line, like your point, they feel like they can get out there and impose their will a little bit in those motions, that Baker's going to be able to, That, I mean, look, and as wonderful as Brady was, he was not a guy that was moving around a whole lot.
Yes.
And there's a lot more flexibility there. I think that I love getting to see some 2 tight end stuff, and especially with this room, it's going to be so good, and I'm excited for Cade Otton. I mean, he already was so amazing last year. Now you expect maybe that year 1 to year 2 jump. So many guys experience maybe, getting to put Baker in motion a little bit more and use that a bit. Like, it's just, I know, I think it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be really fun to watch. So yeah, those were, you hit on everything that I'm excited to watch as well. Of like, I just think it's going to be fun. Yeah. And I think these guys are going to be having fun. And I remember hearing Mike Evans say in some press conference a while back, like, man, this is the most open I've been in a minute.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, excuse me, 1,000 yards a year person, more open.
Right.
Love that. If you're getting 1,000 yards a year, like, not feeling as open as you feel now, what a great time. Right. I think that's going to be super fun to see what that ends up looking like. All right, so now let's get into some injury updates a little bit. Now, we always love to do the disclaimer that we are shooting this on Friday before the Friday injury report comes out, which is the most helpful one because it has the designations on it. So we get to do a little prediction here. So we've seen the Wednesday one. We've seen the Thursday one. We do not have the Friday one yet. So obviously stay tuned for that one to come out with more information on it. But based on the Wednesday and Thursday, what are the things that stand out to you?
The most noteworthy yesterday was Cody Mauch being added with the back issue. He didn't practice yesterday. That's kind of definitely going to be something to monitor. Is he able to practice today?
Yeah, you never like seeing guys get added to the practice report midweek. I mean,
No, you do not. And then, but I think on a positive note, defensive lineman Kalijah Cansey was upgraded to a limited participant on Thursday after not practicing on Wednesday. And then Antoine Winfield with the calf injury, he's been a full participant all week.
And he's fired up to go. That whole hometown guy, Vikings were his team. Dad played for that team.
Yeah,
because he's yet to get to play them in Minnesota. That we played them here, and he had a heck of a game. So already I feel like that's good. Then you put him in front of the Vikings fans. Yeah, I think he's pretty excited. Okay, so now we're going to dive into some of the segments we tend to do every week here on Tampa 2. If you are new, these are the things that we do every week. The first one is going to be a position group that we are excited to watch, and I figured we'd do each side of the ball. That last year we just kind of did one, but now we're gonna expand. We're gonna pick one on each side of the ball that you are really excited to watch this game.
You took mine a little bit earlier I was gonna go outside linebacker on defense, but I'll still do that. I think there's just a lot of excitement building for that, and especially last year they talked a lot about wanting to see more pass rush production from the outside linebackers. Vita Vea, no offense, but when your nose tackle leads your team in sacks, a guy that's traditionally more of just the guy that eats up the blocks, the two-gapper, you need more production from the guys. But I think you had Anthony Nelson re-signed. You have Shaq Barrett coming back from the Achilles tendon injury, and I think he's kind of working his way back to that peak form. But I think there's also a lot of excitement with George Edwards coming in, a guy that played a very critical role in the development of Micah Parsons. Mm-hmm. And Joe Tryon kind of making that leap this year in his third year, finishing at the top of his rushes, not getting off his feet too early. And then also they drafted Yaya Diaby in the third round, him kind of being able to rotate into some of those packages that Todd Bowles likes to dial up. And then Marquise Watts, a guy that's kind of consistently caused havoc in the backfield. So just to see what that kind of comes together, what some of those disguises, how Todd Bowles pieces all those guys together, because like they've talked about, this is a complex defense and they bring guys from everywhere. Mm-hmm. So that, and then on the offensive side of the ball, I am going to go with running back. I think there's just a lot of excitement. Baker Mayfield could have been the easy option to go. Yes.
Yeah, not quite a position group when it's just him. But yes.
But I think after last season, this group was the worst ranked rush output in the NFL. So I think there's a lot of excitement in Dave's new offense, more emphasis on the running game to see how Rachaad White does in a larger role this year. And I think this is really just tailored to fit his system, kind of a lot of the mid-zone stuff, the options, which is what they did with LA and Todd Gurley and the success that he had in that. And it's something he's done. And even when I was talking to him earlier during the offseason, he was saying, he's really focused on not only pass protection to be more well-rounded, but also his explosiveness and his burst. And I think one of the really intriguing things about his skill set is that a lot of rushers, as soon as the hole opens, they immediately have to jump out of the gate. They have to hit it. But with Rachaad, he has the patience and he has the acceleration and the burst to be able to wait a little bit, to let the blocks develop, and then to hit it with that burst and to hit the second level gear. So I think I'm excited to see what this is all able to do. Sean Tucker, the rise that he's potentially going to be able to have, and how this is going to go and how it's able to dictate the flow of games for the Bucs and wear out defenses.
Yeah, I think for my picks, I did one that's more of, in general, why I'm excited to see them this season, and one that's a little bit more Vikings specific.
Ooh,
so my offense group is the offensive line. I'm just so interested to finally see what this group looks like, especially because during all of the preseason of all of training camp and all that, they're, most of the time they're not really hitting. And that's a group that's a lot harder to see what they're going to look like. Wide receiver, DB, one-on-ones, all this stuff, you can see a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I just feel like we don't have a huge idea of what they're going to look like, especially when you look at it, and Hainsey is the only starting offensive lineman from last year's opener to be in the same spot on the line. Anytime you do that, that's fascinating, because that is the group above all else in an NFL team that continuity tends to be important. And anytime you shuffle people around, get new people in there, just to see how that chemistry is working, how the guys are doing individually, how they're working together, I think that's going to be really interesting. And then on defense, I chose cornerback not because of, again, very different. Like, we kind of know what our cornerback group looks like for the most part. We know Carlton, we know Jamel. But against the Vikings and Justin Jefferson, what a test to start the year. They got a lot of weapons. They were the 6th most passing yards in the league last year. Now you've got, your rookie first-round pick, Jordan Addison, plus you got Jefferson. And then to see, we know Carlton, we know Jamel, but I'm really excited to see Christian Izien in the slot. That now Antoine Winfield gets to focus on safety, which I think is great for him, great for the defense. Again, we've talked about this, undrafted rookies that just forced the team to put them in there somewhere. And Christian Izien just said, you got to play me. Yeah. I've done all the things. You got to put me somewhere. And so he won the job at slot. And I think that's going to be very fun to see. All right, so now one-on-one matchup you were excited to see on each side of the ball.
I think many people could have probably predicted this one, but first, I'm going to go with Jamel Dean versus Justin Jefferson. And the Bucs could opt to shadow Carlton on Justin Jefferson, but I think kind of with their prototypical sides, I think you might see Dean on Jefferson a little bit more. But man, I mean, he's a guy, he's had 3 years in the NFL, and he's already considered one of the best in the league. Mike Evans even said yesterday, I mean, this is a guy that early in his career, he's already deemed one of the top, if not the top receiver in the NFL, which I feel like is almost just unprecedented for a guy that early on to already be shattering records. But he's so slippery. His route running, I mean, he has a lethal release package, assassin over the middle of the field, has the short area bursts. He can beat you over the top, but then he also has the agility in the intermediate area of the field to wreck you as well and kind of make defenders miss. So I think for Jamel Dean, the biggest thing, and he has what a lot of cornerbacks don't, and that's 4.3 makeup speed. I mean, even if he does kind of get in that trail position, he has the athleticism to catch up and to make a play on the ball. But I think the biggest thing for him is going to be physical at the line to kind of disrupt Jefferson's tempo and to kind of get him off kilter a little bit. And I think that's going to be critical in this game just because, I mean, when you get an off coverage against Jefferson, he's going to eat you alive and run routes all day long. So I think that's going to be critical. And then kind of my other side, I'm going to go with Tristan Wirfs against outside linebacker Danielle Hunter. And Tristan, I think there's a lot of excitement just because of him switching positions. He's held it down on the right side, has become one of the best tackles in the league, just absolutely a technician with his footwork, his hand placement, has that lateral agility that we've talked about for some of the in-space blocking things. But, I mean, Hunter is a guy that you have to know where he is on every single snap, constantly disrupts, harasses quarterbacks. And just he's able to get offensive linemen to lock them out of their center of gravity, to get them out of their normal leverage. So I think for Tristan Wirfs, this is going to be a really, really big game. And he's been really transparent about some of the mental issues that have come with switching from right to left. Because I think a lot of people just think, he's switching sides, whatever.
Same position.
But, I mean, you have to think that he's doing everything the opposite with the non-dominant hand and what he's used to.
If you tell me to write something with my left hand right now,
it's not going to go
not going to be legible. So it's still writing, but it's going to be very different. I think those are great picks. I think for me on offense, I went with Chris Godwin, and I didn't pick one specific corner. I just kind of said against the Vikings corners in general. I think I cheated, but it's okay. So Patrick Peterson leaves in free agency.
Yes.
Byron Murphy Jr. is the only corner they have to have intercepted a pass in the NFL. The other top corners are both 24 years old. They have 2 combined NFL starts. If I'm Chris Godwin, I'm like, okay. Okay. The Vikings defense, 31st in the league last year in yardage allowed. So now they have Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. He's known for a little bit more of the man-to-man and blitzing. Mm-hmm. And again, you tell me, I get Chris Godwin man-to-man. And I think I would say this about Mike Evans as well. Right. But, maybe they put Byron Murphy, on him a little bit more, the more experienced guy. But I'm just imagining, therefore, that frees up Godwin to have these less experienced guys on him. And if they're blitzing a lot, maybe we're needing the quicker Godwin in the slot kind of a thing. I just feel like this is, and just to see Godwin, again, fully back from the injury. That even though he was back last year and did great, he said all along he wasn't quite himself yet. And now he's had that whole other off season and into it. So I'm really excited to see what that's going to look like. And then on the defensive side of things, yeah, it was the same as what you said of, Carlton, Jamel, however they decide to do it against Justin Jefferson. I will watch that all day long.
Yes.
And then because you said it, I picked another one just in case. I did Vita versus their interior offensive line, especially their center, Garrett Bradbury. So all 5 linemen for the Vikings are the same as opening day last year. They are the opposite of us, essentially. But this is interesting. No team had more runs for 0 or negative yards percentage-wise than the Vikings last year. They did not... Didn't do so hot. That wasn't great.
You want to have.
And so I'm imagining, again, Vita in there against this group that, as of last year, a lot of 0 and negative yard run plays. I'm just imagining Vita getting a chance to blow some things up, which always is really fun. Okay, so keys to the game. What would you say those are for you?
I think for me, just the biggest thing, like we've kind of talked about, is not letting Justin Jefferson take over this game. And that's obviously easier said than done. But I think when you have teams, they have so many offensive weapons, but when you have defenses that try and limit Jefferson by using that too high shell to prevent the big play over the top, well, then that creates opportunities for their tight end, TJ Hawkinson, to exploit the underneath coverage, work the middle of the field, which he did so well last year after he was traded to the team. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is kind of how are they able to handle all of the weapons, the different personnel groupings. They brought in another tight end in Josh Oliver, who's kind of that predominant blocking tight end. So he's going to kind of help create some mismatches for Hawkinson. And then you obviously have Jordan Addison, the rookie, who also has that vertical speed that can beat you over the top. So how are they able to handle all of these things together is going to be crucial in this game.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the run game for us, getting it started. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be so important this year. And it was such an area that they fell short in last year of their expectations and what they wanted to be doing. Can you get the run game going? And then I think just getting off the field on defense, especially not allowing some big chunk plays, that Kirk Cousins to Justin Jefferson can kill you. That it can turn a game on a dime, throwing some 60-yard bomb to him. It's where he can just catch things that he shouldn't be able to catch.
Right.
You can think you have him perfectly covered. And I think just the ability to get off the field on third down, to shorten some of those drives, to not give up those chunk plays. Again, when you're on the road and in a stadium like Minnesota's, you don't want to give them those momentum plays. So I think those were kind of some of my keys to the game. Okay, so how about quote of the week? This is another segment that we do every time as we talk about this. So we each pick a quote that we've heard through one of the press conferences throughout the week that the Buccaneers have given. So what is your quote, Madeira?
I am going to go with a quote from Mike Evans yesterday. There's been a lot of criticism surrounding the Bucs in a post-Tom Brady world, but I think I loved his quote. He said, "There were a lot of doubters, so we're looking forward to shocking a lot of people this year, especially this first week." And I think that's just kind of the excitement and the embodiment of really the theme for this team throughout the entire offseason, just shutting out the outside noise, excited with what this team can be, new offense, a lot of new pieces, that infusion of speed. And I think you're starting to see just the energy pick up on offense with Baker Mayfield's moxie, his leadership, but then also just on defense, a lot of those cornerstone players kind of rallying the team together. So I'm excited, and I kind of agree. I think this team is going to shock a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would almost always rather be the underdog.
Yeah.
It's so much more fun.
You have that bigger chip on your shoulder.
Yes, you're trying to prove everybody wrong, and you don't necessarily have that same target on your back either of like teams saying like, oh,
we have to take
it's Tom Brady, and they all want to have their best game ever against this guy, that sometimes maybe this means other teams are taking you a little lightly. And then you get a chance to come in just feeling that whole nothing to lose feeling and like wanting to prove everybody wrong, wanting to shock the world. You're right, the chip on the shoulder. Athletes need that. I mean, I remember anyone that watched The Last Dance remembers the story of Michael Jordan saying that he literally made something up about somebody to be mad at him. It wasn't even true. It was not even true. And he just made up some story about this guy because he wanted to be mad at him.
That competitive,
he needed that chip on his shoulder. And I remember hearing that and being like, that's
That is insane.
It's the wildest thing. And but it's so true. People need that. And if they don't feel like they have it, they're going to try to invent it, but that's never going to feel the same. I would always rather be the team that is chasing in that sense of feeling like you've got that momentum. And these guys, look, they don't sit here and read or watch a ton of the sports coverage, but they're always going to know what is being said, right? And they know they're not being picked very highly. They know that a lot of these polls, a lot of these rankings have them lower, and that is going to make them mad. And I love it. I think it's the perfect attitude.
Fuel to the fire. I'm here for.
Okay, so my quote I chose was Baker Mayfield talking about Canales. Ooh. He said his mindset, he was basically asked, what does he like most about him and so far, and kind of just what he's brought to the team. So it was less about the X's and O's and more about the kind of the guy and what he's brought in that way. He says his mindset, he's so positive, it's just the next step mentality. The next play, make it the best one. Even if it's just a simple handoff where we're not doing anything besides carrying out a fake, make it your best one. That mindset to give it absolutely 100% each time, it's refreshing. Even though it might be an off play for us, we still carry our weight and we're still a factor in it, so do your business. He's so fresh and that mindset is awesome. I love that. And I think that's a great quality in a coach and a coordinator. And everyone's talked about the energy he brings. And I love that. Even if all you're doing is a handoff and faking,
right?
Do it your best. That every single play, there is no play off, that you are still doing your best. And I love that for Baker, for him to say that it was refreshing. I thought that was really interesting because, so Baker's had so many coaches. So many coaches.
Yes.
And for him to say anything is refreshing from a coach is great.
Yeah.
I think Bowles is his 8th head coach already, and I think Canales is his 6th offensive coordinator. What a wild set of numbers. Just what a wild ride for Baker Mayfield. And so I loved that for a guy who's had a rough road of it. He's gone through a lot of things, a lot of coaches, a lot of situations. For him to feel that this coach he now has is refreshing and to bring out that kind of mindset, I think that's a huge deal. And especially, again, when you're an underdog, that to say every single play matters. And I thought that was very exciting. It got me super excited. So, all right, we now are going to close with this segment. This is a new one that we're doing this year. We talk a lot of X's and O's on the show. We talk a lot about the upcoming game, the previous game, all of that stuff. But we thought it'd be fun to bring a little bit of the human interest side to it, a little bit of the off the field things to it. So every week we're going to have one thing we talk about that is a little bit more of the off the field. So it's funny because I knew we were going to end up talking about Sean Tucker a whole lot. And I thought I learned this little nugget about him and it made me laugh very hard. So he got famous at Syracuse for his post-game tweets. Have you heard about this?
I have not heard about this.
It's one of my favorite things I've read in a really long time. Okay, so basically people would wait for his tweets after a game. It's my goodness. And he's continuing it here. So now, Bucs fans, you can also do this. Follow Sean Tucker on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to continue calling it Twitter because I feel like nobody knows what you're talking about. What is it? What an X? I know. I haven't figured that out either. So that's why I'm just calling them his tweets. I am going to read you 3 examples.
Yes, please do.
Of his tweets. And it's so funny because it sounds like something AI has written. That's my impression of it. It sounds like if you were like, AI, write a tweet for a football player or something. So this is so great. This is the first one. Saturday, we played Albany and won. Syracuse 62, Albany 24. I am pleased with my performance, but not so happy with my penalty. I'll work on that. I ran for 13 attempts, 132 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 receptions for 121 yards and 1 touchdown. End of tweet. It's so good. So here's his next one. Finally, an ACC win. Syracuse 41, Virginia Tech 36. I'm pleased with my performance and happy with the outcome. I ran 20 attempts for 112 yards with 2 receptions for 14 yards. Thanks to my O-line for helping me reach 1,000 yards and more to come. I'm just getting started. So those were obviously things went well, right? I know. I have to. How else do you read these tweets? I don't know how else you do it. Okay. This is the other one. You've noticed both of those? We were pleased. Things were good. I had to give you an example of when things aren't good. Okay. Saturday, we lost. Syracuse 9, Pitt 19. I'm not pleased with the outcome of the game. Another bad day. I'm not pleased with my performance. Offense struggled and never got started. I'm back in the grind this week. I rushed for 19 yards, reception for 3 yards. So now you've heard a common denominator in all three of these. Either he's pleased or not pleased yeah. with both his performance and then the outcome. There was another Twitter account someone created at Syracuse that was called the Sean Tucker Pleased Tracker, where they would end up saying they would
like a tally?
Yes, they were tallying when he was pleased and when he was not pleased.
Yes.
And they made these little like emoji looking faces that was like, there was the not pleased, there was the it was okay, and then there was the pleased.
This is incredible.
And they would reply to his tweet and it would say Tucker pleased tracker. Sean Tucker is pleased, or Sean Tucker is not pleased. And I was like, I love this. I hope this continues. If whoever ran
make
that,
some T-shirts.
Yes, Sean Tucker is pleased.
Yeah.
You know what?
Like the check of the box.
We're saying this right now. We are going to make these, and we're going to hand these out to the running back room. I love this. We've already
there needs to be T-shirts.
We've made so sure. That is our little off the field fun nugget for you guys this week. Pay attention to Sean Tucker's tweets. Yeah. They're incredible.
We will be.
I think I heard he started doing it because he wanted to keep his family updated on his performance from afar. I don't think that he
It makes sense why he's putting the stat line.
It was like his way of like, here's what happened, everybody. Yeah. But I doubt he knew it would go so viral. But it's like this became just such a famous thing at Syracuse. And so I want it to continue here. Mm-hmm. If the person doing the pleased tracker is a Syracuse person, I hope you're continuing it here. If not, we're going to have to someone step up, create the tracker.
Yes.
The please tracker.
Yes.
All right, that's going to do it for us on our week 1 edition of Tampa 2. Thank you so much for watching or listening, and we hope you are back here next week when we are hopefully talking about a win over the Minnesota Vikings.